excited that this evening we are going to have our fifth in a row. This is the number 5 with Lyndon LaRouche, who is rebuilding the political process in this country through the process of these calls and his own intervention in this. And we're hoping that people are using these calls to spread the word, get other people involved, and that you're losing sleep at night figuring out, what am I going to ask Lyndon LaRouche next week? So we'll get in a lot of questions here tonight. I will point out a couple of things as people are beginning to get on. Clearly, we are at the end, reaching the end of the month of June, where there is an absolute dramatic showdown in this world. We have the St. Petersburg Economic Forum beginning now in Russia, with the Prime Minister of Greece there. We have the showdown in Greece, which is, I'm sure we'll hear some discussion of that tonight. We obviously have the showdown that occurred today in the U.S. Congress with Barack Obama, who is openly now working with Republicans. So we have quite a bit of work to do. Mr. LaRouche issued a statement. I would highlight that for everybody on the phone here early, that was put on the website, LaRouchePAC.com this morning. An absolutely crucial statement, which is entitled, "Dump London's Phony Debts with Glass-Steagall. The euro is bankrupt, not the drachma." Now, this in this statement, Mr. LaRouche calls for an international Glass-Steagall, beginning with the United States of America. And I would point out also, which is relevant to developments from today, a statement that came out earlier in this week on the website, an earlier lead, which is entitled, "On Razor's Edge, the Case of Satanic John Schellenhuber." So this is, of course, referencing what happened around the statement issued today by the Vatican, buying into the global climate change. So these are two very important statements which are on the website and are available. So I hope all of you who are on from the New York, New Jersey area, further up in New England, are in touch with our New Jersey office, because I know they have a special Father's Day musical event, which I'm hoping that someone might get on and announce here this evening during our call. That's a little hint to some people who might be on in New York, to announce that a very special event, which is part of a special drive at Manhattan right now in terms of using the power of classical music to really help unleash the kind of political process we need in this country. So again, this is John Asher, the host for these activist conference calls for quite a number of years now. I'd like to welcome all of you here. If you're on for the first time, our call in the last 5 weeks has really been honored. We've been all honored to have Mr. LaRouche on the call with us. This is will be the 5th such discussion with Lyndon LaRouche, and this is going to continue. And obviously, the calls are part of a process really of rebuilding the sense of morale within the country after 2 presidencies of Bush and Obama, which have been an absolute catastrophe. So we're obviously gathering here this evening on the call at a time which is absolutely dramatic, with a Greek default looming, with a danger of thermonuclear war. Therefore, it's a very, very excellent time to hear the wisdom from Mr. LaRouche and to engage in a dialogue with him. And he is going to be with us here momentarily. And we will soon hear if he has any preliminary remarks. And we will get the recording of this call. Just to make a few remarks about how to ask a question when I turn on the queue. You'll be able to get into the queue by hitting *6. We ask people do not use speaker phones when you're in the queue. Speak directly into the phone. And we're also going to be taking a few questions this evening from our online audience that are live on YouTube. I'd like to welcome all of you on who are through that and through the social media. So now we're going to turn on our recording machine and we're going to get this underway.
This conference is being recorded.
So good evening, everyone. This is John Asher in Leesburg, Virginia, welcoming everyone to this evening's Number 5, Fireside Chat with Lyndon LaRouche. These have been absolute historic occasions of a critical dialogue for rebuilding the presidency within the United States. So I wanted to see, Lynn, are you on the call here now?
I am on the call, and I've got one dog, which is my dog, and we have another dog, which is here visiting with me, as does frequently. So we have dogged determination and human behavior mixed up together.
Okay, and we will, if we hear unusual questions, the dogs will bark in the background, I imagine, right?
Not necessarily. To be curious. Dogs tend to, in such a circumstance, when we're engaged in something, the dogs will tend to watch us and become the spectators of the game.
Okay, all right, that's terrific. All right, so Lynn, would you like to begin with any preliminary remarks here this evening?
Yeah, sure, I think so. I think it probably is useful to do to get people gathered around the fireside, shall we say. We've now reached a point where the whole world is in a tremendous crisis. The United States is also in a tremendous crisis. Great changes are occurring all around it. Some of them are not conclusive in the present point, but if you watch the patterns, you see that everything is going on in that direction. For example, Obama is really in a very difficult situation. Any certain kinds of developments which are quite feasible to bring about could ruin him. He's on the edge of being ruined. He still is, you know, the mad dog, but not really a dog, the mad snake. And therefore, that's factor in. But the point is, we're moving where the Democratic Party is moving on the Republicans who thought they had the total power over the whole thing at this time. And they don't have it. So we have to approach things from that standpoint, not by playing like dogs and trying to eat other people's bones, but rather instead of thinking this thing through. For example, one of the important things we should be doing, which we are not doing yet, even in fairly good circles in the Democratic Party, there's some good signs there on action, but it takes a little time to get that action moving. So if we have the right actions and begin to gnaw on the bones of Obama or people like him, which is a dogged determination idea, then we will move. We probably can break out. We're on the edge of the ability to pull a breakout. We're just short in the terms of the Democratic Party and people generally, our nation generally. We're very close to the point where we could potentially get Obama out of the picture. That is, weaken him, so the point he does not have dictatorial claims anymore. That would make a big difference. But there are other things that have to be done. We have to deal with the problem of Wall Street. And Wall Street has to be tamed. And these are the things that have to happen. They're not clearly predefined, but we understand them, and we know that these are the kinds of things, not necessarily all the things, but the kinds of things which will enable the people of the United States to get a better control over the situation and bring down Obama's funny games. That would be the immediate attention. This would coincide with stopping Obama's tendency for putting on global thermonuclear war. And right now, we're talking about the remainder of June and July is a period where Obama might still be able to provoke, together with the British, to provoke a general thermonuclear war. And a general thermonuclear war could be the extinction of the human species, or something very close to it. So that's where we are. These kinds of things have to be considered. And the problem we have with our people in the United States is most people in the United States have no willingness to understand what these factors are. They just wish something. They wish something was going to make it work. They hope that something will be done to make things better for them. So they're getting pretty desperate on that thing already. They haven't had much experience with success so far. But there's something in the Democratic Party has begun to move in a very serious way. And you're getting surprises, like a cat coming down on the back of some animal that's trying to eat, where the Democratic Party pounces on the Republican Party and begins to eat it. So it's a complicated process right now, but it's an understandable kind of process, which most of our citizens, of course, don't understand. But the knowable facts are already available for those who can calmly look at reality, can see, maybe this is the kind of thing that will do the job to get the United States out of the mess it's in now. That's the kind of thing we have to think about.
Okay, well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn on the question and A queue.
Q&A session started.
And for those of you who've not been on before, to get into that queue, you have to hit *6. I ask people not to use speakerphones, to speak as distinctly as possible. This evening, we're also going to be taking a couple of questions from, this evening, Lynn, we have also been building through the website a live YouTube internet audience. So we're going to introduce a few questions from people that are interacting live with someone with LaRouche Pack, who's in the room next to me. So we hope to get some questions from our live YouTube audience as well here this evening. So I would ask people, okay. So I would ask people, when you speak, please give us your first name and where you are from. That is, what city that is. And we're going to take, all right, we're going to take the first question up here.
Okay.
Mr. LaRouche. Hey, this
yes.
is Dylan Addison out in Corvallis, Oregon. My question is about artificial intelligence. And I'd ask you, which assumptions or axioms that we currently believe to be true would have to be overthrown in order to build machines that think creatively, that is, machines that employ the use of metaphor?
Well, actually, there are no machines designable which could actually do thinking. The human mind is completely different than any kind of these substances or these tricks, or absolutely different than any animal life. No animal life can simulate effectively human behavior. For example, our pet dogs, sometimes who are well trained, but the dog show things that look like human behavior, but it's not really human behavior. It's the dog, in this case, when you get a dog that's a family dog or hunting dog or something, what you get is the dog responds to human behavior. But the dog will give an interpretation of human behavior which may not be actually human. But for the dog's purposes, the dog is responding to the human behavior, human standards. So actually the point is, the problem that gets in the way of people understanding reality, and I do mean reality, is that mankind is not an animal. That is, the animals cannot create new ideas or principles. Only human beings. For example, let's take two cases of modern history. Take Kepler. Johannes Kepler. Kepler discovered the existence and the principles of the solar system. Then we now have made recently a development which is known as the galactic system, the principle of the galactic system, which is more powerful, more influential power for mankind than was simply what Kepler's own discovery. So what happens, mankind not some artificial system. It's mankind innovating conceptions which mankind had not recognized before, and using those conceptions in order to increase the productivity of mankind. And it's this thing that no animal can do. Animals can be trained or influenced to cause what's things that look like human behavior, but they're not. So what's happened? Let's take the case of the 20th century. Now, what happened is the United States, for example, was from the time of the beginning of the United States under people like and so and so. But what was happening was the United States was increasing the power of mankind in the solar system, on Earth. And this is what the 19th century amounted to. At the end of the 20th century, or the beginning of the 20th century, what happened is the United States plunged into a long, more than a century-long degeneration of the intellectual powers of the individual. There may have been technological advances on some aspects, but the quality of the mind of the human being in the United States, for example, has been degenerating since the beginning of the 20th century. So what we have to look at is the power of mankind to understand the way that mankind himself can just make discoveries which allow the human being to do something which no other human being has ever been able to do before. So the idea that it's the idea of the technological, mankind, mechanical, technological kind of discussion was wrong. And all the actual evidence shows that the idea of this, popular opinion is just plain bunk.
Okay. All right. So we are going to, I think, have a special announcement here, Lynn, which I think you'll be happy with the next individual who's going to speak. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Hello.
Someone doesn't realize they're unmuted. Okay. All right. Let's see. Maybe I can try that again and see if it works.
Oh, can you?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Are you still on?
Hold on a sec. You're on? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, well, we're having some technical difficulties. Hi, this is Lynn Yan. I'm the executive director of the Foundation for the Revival of Classical Culture, and we are presenting this upcoming Carnegie Hall concert on Father's Day, this Sunday at 4 p.m. And this concert is, the theme is classical music against violence. As a matter of fact, the theme of the concert is, not war, but music, not violence, but music, not death, but music, because, can you hear me still?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay,
go ahead.
Because music is life itself. And the concert, the reason that we're doing this concert is because today there has to be a way for people to become alive again. Nonviolent music. There has to be something that doesn't bang or crash or shout, or is not flashing strobing lights, but actually where it's the human mind that it's just the instrument and an idea that actually that is the canvas upon which your imagination is caused to paint a picture of how life it is. Anyways, this concert of ours, which is Bach, Brahms, Schumann, and Chopin, will be performed at the proper tuning of middle C at 256 cycles per second, which is going to be at A 430. We've had a lot of wonderful responses from schools. We have over 2,000 confirmations from the public schools. And a lot of these teachers, when we were talking to them about the concert, responded really ardently to the idea that this concert, to the idea that there's something has to be done about the violence, especially when we told them, when we talked about the fact that we picked Father's Day because men and young men and fathers, they're the major purveyors of violence. They're the most at risk to suffer from violent deaths and violence, but they're also the most qualified to reverse it, and that a more dignified and less violent America needs to take place, replace the violent and thoughtless and completely out of control insane one that we have in America today. And it has to be our menfolk who has to lead the charge. So whenever we discuss the idea of a concert with the teachers, they're really excited. They were really completely on board. As a matter of fact, this concert is part of also what we're going to be doing in going into the summer, which is going to be a summer music and science program, involving, we hope, a lot of young people from the New York City area. Now, Megan Beats and Jason Ross actually helped us and taught some of the classes last year in the music and science program, and we had students who really, for example, Jose Vega, one of the students who just actually spoke at the Schiller conference in November, and really articulately and beautifully about the relationship between music and science and Kepler. Now, the concert is being performed by Yeji Park and Borislav Strulev and Tian Zhen, especially Yeji Park, who's only 17, the violinist. I think has a really beautiful conception of music, and she talks about how she wants to perform the music not for the money, not for any being a professional musician, because this is the thing that makes her want to be a human being. Now I want to ask Mr. LaRouche the question of, what is it that we should be really doing going forward around this, and what your general thoughts is on what we're planning on doing going forward.
I think there are 4 examples which they're not adequate to span the entire subject matter, but I think these 4 cases will help to typify what the things are that we have to do in terms of the music and the role of music. First of all, the classical musical composition, just as a preliminary to this matter, reply, there is a way of performing music, which I think you may probably be familiar with, which was the classical kind of music, which Megan Beats laid out. Again, I don't know whether it's the one, her most recent statement on the thing or an earlier statement, but that's very crucial. Now, on the other hand, the people think that you can that instruments produce music. Now they don't. The instruments are useful in helping mankind to capitalize on potential. Now you have areas like you're talking about, New York. New York City is, of course, one of the finest sources of organization of classical musical composition. Unfortunately, over the course of the 20th century, classical music was forced to degenerate. Only a few great musicians were actually capable of freshly generating. Some of my friends who unfortunately are deceased were among the best people of that type, and that people like that were of that. So we have the classical music from Italy, from Germany, there's some from Britain, but they're special cases. And so this is one category. So they understand the principle of which underlies the function of classical musical composition. everything that is not classical musical composition, in principle, is a fake. And what's happened in the 20th century, real music has been dying. And not only dying in terms of behavior, it's been dying in terms of human understanding of what this means and the ability of the mental powers of the individual to part. Most people who are musicians today, the popular musicians, do not have the ability to actually do creative things. They make noises, and they make exotic noises often, like the most popular music. Now, you got another thing on this thing. So these great sources of classical musical composition, which have been shrunken down to a very small part of the total population. Right? In addition to that, we have something abroad, in China. Now, China is not the United States, of course, but you will find there's a great development of classical music in China. It's massive. But China is probably actually is one of the most, anciently, one of the greatest sources of classical culture, of Chinese classical culture, and spreading around it. So that's a source. And then on the other hand, we must develop new capabilities for understanding what this whole thing is about. And you will find that the deep understanding of what the classical principles were, have been. I could name all kinds of great people in that area. And if you can understand how they designed music in the relevant centuries, you can understand the idea of a general conception of what we would call classical music, including in the Chinese variety. A very important part. Chinese musical development today has a great influence on the planet. This is one of the greatest sources of music, and it's come up especially in recent years, in China. So the idea is, our own organization is very much deeply involved in developing for specifically New York City and the environs to develop a fresh launching of the real classical musical performance. Now, not all of our people are fully professional, but a number of our people are professionals and competent professionals. And they are connected to people who were the great people, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Some of them, like so all these, I could go more of that long list. But this is what we have to understand. The final point I would make is you say, what is music? Now, some people think that it's a popular form of music. You rub instruments. But it's not that. What's there is the kind of thing that you got from the great classical composition in Europe. And this was spilled into the United States as well. New York City was to some degree, Boston, were the centers of classical musical development in my span of life. So if we understand that, then what we should do is to understand that we have to revive these schools and development of classical musical composition, understanding the actual principles, not the noise-making principles, but the actual principles of composition and performance, which made the greatest classical music before. Now, we may add something to the repertoire, as happened in history as such, which will change characteristics of popularized forms of classical musical composition and performance. But that doesn't make much difference, really, with the principal thing. Because the point is that classical music is something which can only exist through the activity of the proper development of the individual human mind. And therefore, classical music, composition, and the introduction of that to schools, to children in schools, as in New York, or it used to be the case in Boston, or for a while in Detroit. You had a very active classical musical school in Detroit, which pretty much got shot down when Detroit was pretty much shot down. So what the point is, there is this principle that classical music has nothing to do with barroom music or making funny sounds, or that sort of thing. But what we need is to revive the best of what we know already from experience in terms of classical music composition in the past, in European development of classical music, from Bach on particularly, and going into what we did in the United States at the best period, especially in the 19th century, and something we managed to keep alive for a little bit in the 20th century. And that's what we have to do, is realize that approach to classical music composition, as so defined, is a part of the moral development and the mental development of the average human person. To put this kind of thing into the periphery of the school system from the beginning of the school education is essential for the moral development of the powers of the human mind of the individual. And that should be our mission. And what you're talking about is one of those kinds of things that have been going on. Some people are trying to restore and recover classical musical composition in a competent way. And New York City is one of the areas where this is most possible. We ourselves are putting a lot of pressure now we have certain capabilities, but we don't have enough classically trained performers, but we're trying to work on that thing to increase the number of classically trained, qualified performers. And this is something we should be in schools. It should be in all kinds of experience in life, and get the junk, the noise, out of the areas of the minds of our people.
Okay, wonderful. And I hope before the end of our discussion tonight, I'll hopefully have a website we can get to you, everybody on the phone, so you can find out more information about the event coming up Sunday. So I'm going to take another caller up here, and just before, again, I'll reiterate that for people who want to get into the queue, you hit *6, and then you get into the queue, and we're just calling on people in the queue. So make sure you speak directly into the phone. Please don't use a speakerphone, and we'll just keep on going here. We're going to take the next question up.
Hello, Lynn. This is Tony Witcher from Lake Arrowhead, California. It's an honor to speak with you. My question is, like this, we have been somewhat discouraged, I think, lately in trying to call Congress because they just haven't been responsive. But now what we see is that that the Democrats in Congress have significantly broken with Obama. We see that, and what I think we ought to be doing is to be calling Democrats in Congress en masse to tell them that the party needs to take a new direction, that Obama has misled the party, and we need to move in the, looking forward, we need to put in Glass-Steagall and back a candidate who is going to put in Glass-Steagall, which is Martin O'Malley. This is the moment when we can call Congress and hopefully turn the Democratic Party around. What do you think?
Oh, this is something which is technically feasible. It has a growing potential to be realized. Though I don't think it's very impressive what the potential is right now so far. But when you take into account the real nature of actually classical musical performance and composition, which is far different than anything that most people in the United States understand today. What is understood as music today among most people in the United States is really essentially a form of noise, not music. Bong, 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 all these kinds of funny noises. So this is extremely important. It's important because this develops the moral powers of the citizen. or the student. And that's what you want. And the moral powers correspond to a specifically, expressly classical approach to human behavior. I just referred earlier to the question of what China had done historically in terms of the approach to music, which is actually ancient. China is to our best knowledge, is the most ancient, most powerful, ancient culture on the case. But then we have the modern culture, and we have some things, from earlier periods of music. But this is a moral force which makes people more intelligent or less unintelligent today. And it's important that this occurred. It's important that this development be understood and be supported. Because when people understand what classical music actually does, when performed properly, it produces an effect which otherwise is impossible to attain. And this effect has a moral force in society. And this moral force, which that kind of music represents, creates the moral impulses of the behavior of our citizens.
Okay, well, Lynn, we got a couple of questions from our internet audience, which are referred to something that Lin Yen, the musician from New York, referred to also in her speaking about classical music. She was referring to how part of their event on Sunday was against to do something counter to all of the violence in society. So we had a couple of people who wrote in asking about this horrible incident that occurred last night in Charleston, South Carolina, in an African-American church, and asking whether or not that there is an effort in this country to divide people against each other, and if this is a deliberate effort to try to stir things up in terms of racially in the United States. So I'm just kind of communicating. This is two questions on the same topic from people who are listening live right now via YouTube. Would you like to say something about that?
Yeah, I'm perfectly satisfied to say something about that. Look, what's happening, this thing is both what it appears to be, but it's also what it may not appear to be. Now, what's happened with that incident, which recently just reported? What that was, you have some stooge, some young person, a stooge, which sits in a church, a Negro church, and then lurches up from in the audience and starts killing people, including the pastor of the church. And people say, what's happening? Well, it's not that guy. That guy is an instrument which is cultivated and used and brought into the church. In other words, he was not really the author of the phenomenon. He was the instrument used by the people who created the incident. Now, one of the things in the United States is, you have the history of this slavery, Negro slavery in the United States, where people from Europe were put into ships, put down in chains for a whole transport across the ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean, down into some part in the United States. Most of this was done by the British agencies. All right, so this is a history. Now, therefore you had, because of the southern states of the United States, from Virginia on down, all the way down, has been historically, up to the present day, a concentration center for racism. Now, what's the function of racism? Well, the one part people say, well, it's for slavery. That's too simple. It's not, yes, slavery is a big factor, but that's not what the point is. What they've done, remember, we had, once the revolution under Lincoln occurred, the so-called Negro slave began to become not only freed, but also geniuses. because there were leaders among the former slaves, or the slaves then, who would actually develop with a fierce desire to get out of what the evil was that they were being subjected to, as opposed to the slaves as such. And even those who had been slaves as such began to rise, because when people went from slavery to freedom, and when it was true freedom and not some kind of southern dirty trick, under those conditions you would find the mental powers of the Negroes in the United States increased, and they increased at an accelerated rate. So, all right, now this is part of the thing. Now you look at the whole picture. Look at this context that I just defined in terms of the history of the transatlantic region and beyond. What happened? What happened was, look what you're seeing right now in the area, New York, in the area of Europe, where you have massive shipments of people from Africa being shipped into Italy and other places, and then being thrown back from these other places, such as France, and condemned to death. And the rate of death rates by these transports across the Mediterranean has been a source of a rise of mass murder. Now, what you're getting is, you can put the two things together. You're seeing that inside the United States, you're also getting a mass murder phenomenon of this type. And this guy, whoever he was, this young guy, who sat in the black church and then rose to that to kill off the pastor and kill other members of the body. He was not the cause of this thing. He was the instrument of this thing. He was the animal who operated under orders from a higher sense. Now, if you look at the whole process inside the United States, you see inside the United States, there is a massive increase of the growth of this kind of horror show coming out inside the United States. And it comes especially in the border areas, including Texas. And Texas is a borderline case. So therefore, the problem is there's a international, largely British-directed, British-steered, into the United States in particular, as well as in the Mediterranean cases, which are across the Mediterranean area. And what this is global. The purpose is, and this includes in California, we have a governor in California who is organizing mass killing of citizens in California by trying to deprive them of water. And even though there are excuses for this thing, there are no excuses for it. There is no problem of water. You've got even the Pope is being sucked into this thing. But he has a Nazi who's giving the instructions to the Pope on how to deal with this thing. But the Pope is intimidated. So he is capitulating to terror, in fact. And we should free him from that sort of thing. We had some close friends in the papacy at one point, including a Pope, working with him. And it was far different then than what's going on now. So the point is, we have to realize that there are forces typified by the British Empire, which have, for in legendary periods of time, and also earlier, which have done this kind of method of mass assassinations of human beings, reducing populations. That is going on now. That is going on under the governor of California, for example, who's doing exactly that. So what is happening in that church that we just referred to here, where this foolish little boy rose from the pew, amid the pew, and made mass murder. Actually conducted it, killed the pastor and so forth and so on. This is now a horror show. But the horror show is being used to promote a replication of that kind of horror show, to spread it more broadly. And therefore, we have an enemy within the United States as well as other places. And you don't sit back and say, we're impotent, there's nothing we can do about it, this happened, this happened, this happened. This guy did it. Well, this guy may have done the action, but he wasn't the cause of the action. It were another group of people, and when you look at the territory area, you say, oh, this is typical Southerner behavior. It's not that, but that's what the way it works. You have the race hatred factor in the southern states, especially as you don't have it in the northern states. Texas, for example, racism. The former lower states, racism, racism, racism. Florida, racism. The highest rate of murder is in Florida. And it's not on the beaches of Florida. It's among the bitches of Florida. So these are the kinds of things we have to take into account.
Okay. All right. We're going to take another question up here. Okay.
Hi, this is Andy Olson in southwest Minnesota. And I would like to ask a question about this business of free trade that's plagued us now for 15 years with NAFTA in North America, and I viewed that as a looting of the American people, the American companies, and then now we're talking about Trans-Pacific free trade, and I can't quite get my arms around the idea of the transatlantic would probably be running this, and the United States would pass a law that could loot countries all over the world. And I just can't see how they can pull this off, especially with the BRICS countries. So I just want to see if you could comment.
Yes, sure. Well, I think a lot of the problem currently today is from Obama himself. It's Obama and his intimate allies, the Republican Party. Now, that doesn't mean the Republicans as such are categorically of this nature, but there is a certain group, like, well, I won't name the actual name of the section of the part of the thing, but there are people in the Republican Party, in the Congress, who have no business being even in the United States. These are trash. These are blue trash, white trash, pink trash, all kinds of things. But they're Republicans. Now you see the picture now. Here you have Obama. Obama is supposed to be a Republican. He's not a Democrat, he's a Republican, right? So, what's going on? Now, the Democrats don't like, the real Democrats don't like anything of this stuff. They're not in favor of Republicans. But they don't blame the Republicans as such. They blame the caste system, which controls top-down the Congress of the United States. And what the issue is now, what's going on, is Obama is a racist. He's against human beings, essentially. Not against black or white or pink or anything. He's against human beings. And look, if you know the truth about him, I know the truth about him from the first time I encountered him when he was first put into power in the United States. And I had an attack on him because I exposed the fact that he was promoting death rates. That was what his policy was. And I attacked that, and he really got very angry about that and tried to kill me and tried to poison me, and all these kinds of things happened. Actually did. I got out of that. I knew what would happen to me, and if the attempt to poison me in that way didn't really work, because I sort of recovered rather quickly. After about I had a year of real problems as a result of what the poisoning was. But that was all over. But I was out there, and here I was the first threat against Obama, and once he was elected. And so he acted in rage, because there were some very influential circles at that time in the administration, and they were attacking the health care policies of Obama. And the health care policies of Obama right then were already genocidal. That is, for mass genocide trends. And he's always been of that nature ever since he became president. Now, what's happened now is he's now being dumped. He's all to be thrown out the window. But he's in the last phase of a desperate effort to cause global thermonuclear war. In other words, the danger from Obama now is, as long as he remains president of the United States, or presidential powers, he is committed, absolutely, profoundly, energetically committed to launching international thermonuclear war between the period of now into probably, say, July, maybe as late as early August. The people of the United States right now are in danger of being exterminated, or virtually exterminated, by a thermonuclear war, which is organized chiefly by the British Empire. And remember, Obama is a British Empire stooge. He always was. He was shipped in. His father, his mother, was married into a terrorist in Asia, and his tradition has always been he's a terrorist intrinsically. He's a human hater of human beings. His father was part of that same stuff. So it's, what do you expect? So the problem now, Obama is no longer a Democrat. As of the recent period, he is no longer a Democrat. He's a Republican. Well, how did a Republican president get to be, in that transition? So we have to get rid of Obama. And the problem, that is on the edge. There are Republicans, notable Republicans in particular, who are ready to dump Obama at the first opportunity. And that's the thing that has to occur. If we dump Obama, and the point is, you now have, Obama is essentially a Republican. He has no connection really to the Democratic Party anymore. And this is what the problem that's going on there. How can the Republican Party respond to the fact that Obama is a Republican? And there are very few Democrats among the Republican Party, among the Democratic Party. So that's the situation. And what we need to understand is we have to realize we have to arouse our own citizens, who are not necessarily Republicans by any means, and certainly not Obamaites, and get them out of power, get them thrown out of power. And we in the United States, I know with what the movement is inside the Democratic Party now, and some other locations, we are ready to move and dump Obama and to dump the kind of Republicans that breed with Obama. And that's our best shot.
Okay. All right. We'll take another question up here.
Yeah, this is Virginia Kane from New York City.
Yes.
I wanted to, very interested in knowing your opinion of the special interest groups.
Well, that's a broad term, and I think it tends to get confusing. But there are ways of looking at something we might call the so-called interest groups of that type. But I don't think it's truly categorical. I think probably the experience might suggest that it's categorical. and there are people who adopt a policy, a belief, which is not their own. But it's like the guy goes out and gets a special kind of suit that he runs around in, and he calls himself something like that. But it's all foolishness on that side. So, I mean, we are in a situation where we should be able to, if we can get our citizens to move a little faster and inside. And there are movements such as part of our economic system, which do understand what has to happen. And these people are willing to move and are capable of moving, but we have to get some of the weight off their backs. There are many Americans now who realize that the condition of life of the typical citizen of the United States has been in a long wave of degeneration of the standard of living of the American citizen, which began at the beginning of the 20th century and has become ever worse ever since, up to the present time. So the time has come for the American citizen to revolt against this kind of suppression to the economic policies which were introduced during the 20th century. Because there's been a consistent decline, a deterioration of the conditions of life of the average citizen of the United States. And it's been getting worse all the way along. And then any of you who've lived for any period, say 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, you could trace that very readily. Conditions of life for the typical American has become progressively worse as Wall Street has enriched itself by gambling.
Okay, I'll take another question up here.
Hello, this is Joshua from New York City.
Yeah. Proceed.
And I've heard, I received information about Greece have declared that their debt owed to the International Monetary Fund to be illegal, illegitimate, and odious. And obviously they didn't use Glass-Steagall, but it seems to run along the lines of what you have been talking about in regards to how the banking system is run. What's your take on that?
The first thing that must be done is we have to shut down Wall Street, because what's happening? Wall Street is not producing anything. That is a net effect. They're producing nothing. As a matter of fact, they're detracting. Wall Street is destroying the economy of the United States. And what we should do and must do, and what the presidency must do once Obama is kicked out, what we must do is get that Wall Street shut down. Because look, what Wall Street does is they don't do anything for the U.S. economy. Nothing. Much less than nothing. And it grows, becoming bigger and bigger and bigger as less than nothing now. So the thing is, we should be shutting down Wall Street. Now, Glass-Steagall, as a law, Franklin Roosevelt's law, would eliminate that problem. So what we want to do is don't buy these guys out, bankrupt them, shut them down. Huh? The minute we shut them down, you will find out that what has happened is the people of the United States are being looted by means of use of Wall Street money, Wall Street investment. So shut down Wall Street, get it out of business, bankrupt it, shut it down, and change the character of the economy to what? To technological progress in labor and skills. We've been going in the other direction. Just think, if you look back at your own history, what has been the trend in terms of the relative productivity of labor per capita in the United States during your lifetime so far? you have been going through an increasing rate of destruction of your standard of living and your circumstances and moral circumstances of life in the United States. What's the key point? The key instrument is Wall Street. Now, Wall Street should be canceled, and Glass-Steagall would do that. So you want to get Glass-Steagall into operation right now as an anti-Republican operation. And then you will get an opening under which we will have the financial mobilization required to increase the productive powers of labor in the United States. And the increase of the productive powers of labor in the United States is the increase of the standard of living of the people of the United States. Better education, better life, better health care, all these types of things. And these are things which are already available to man in terms of technology in the United States. But we have to get Wall Street shut down. Glass-Steagall, if properly enforced, will do that. It will also bankrupt most rich Republicans. That won't hurt anybody. That will be useful. The Republicans who get bankrupted, they'll have to change their careers and they'll become more moral as opposed to less moral trends that they have been showing recently.
Well, I'm not sure Donald Trump would like to hear that, Lynn, but I think he should take it anyway. So, okay, we're going to take another question up here. Here we go.
Somebody's trying to Trump something, you know.
Okay. Sir, I've unmuted you.
What? Go ahead.
Okay, I'm waiting for someone else to speak here. I've unmuted him, but he may not realize it.
Oh, my God. Being muted, that's terrible. Reputed is better.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to pick somebody else because I think, unfortunately, the gentleman didn't quite understand the little message. Here we go. We'll take another person up.
Okay, good.
Yes, this is Wayne from Virginia. Mr. LaRouche, I have another question concerning the Greek crisis. We know that this dynamic of the collapse of the transatlantic system is what's driving all this push for war. But recently, the Cyprus government made a comment that the IMF is a criminal organization. And I think that signals that they're fed up with these talks. And they have a meeting with the Russians. I don't know if it's tomorrow or next Friday, but at that point, the Greeks could potentially join the BRICS. And I'm just wondering what effect does that have on the Merkel government and the threat of war if it hasn't already happened by then?
Yeah, you hit the key note right there with that supplementary remark. Well, what's happened is this. Now, Greece has been a slave state, a slave economy for some time. It was induced by corrupt elements inside the Greek population, but that was only an incidental feature. And what's happened is what you're dealing with is a threat of a mass murder of the Greek population. Now, this comes as under a British category, the British Empire. And Wall Street, of course, is a product of the British Empire. And Wall Street is a means of destruction of the means of life and so forth, and education of people in general. So, and you have to understand what the British Empire is. Actually, the United States has been living under the influence of a British Empire imperial control over a very long period of time. At one point in our course of our history, we fought and defeated the British forces. But lately, we've done a very poor job of dealing with that kind of problem. Now, so that's where the problem arises in that sort of thing. So if we don't deal with this problem, we're going to get a mass death. Right now, the solution for the Greek condition in terms of very narrow and specific circumstances, the Greeks themselves, the leading Greeks, are saying to hell with their hellraiser is the British monarchy, Her Majesty. And this is the racist mass killer in the transatlantic period, is the British royal family. Now, if this is not anything unique for people who know what the story is. The British royal family, that is the presently living members of the British royal family, have a policy of degeneration and mass murder of the populations of the planet. That's their policy. It has been their policy. It's their declared policy. It's their publicly declared policy. And that's what the problem is. Now, at the same time, the use of speculation, wasteful speculation, becomes the mechanism by which the economy of Europe is being ruined. Portugal, ruined. Spain, ruined. France, very deeply injured. Italy, great injury, and so forth and so on. And so what you have is you have Germany, which still has some strength. I'm not saying that Germany is the great ideal of modern European culture, but it happens to be in Europe. This side of Russia is the only nation which really has a significant growth pattern in it, and that's not too good right now. But there's certain people, not Merkel. Merkel is not a very good thing to have in Germany, or Germans. It's Merkel or Merkel, whatever you want to call her. So that's where the problem is. And this is how the Greek problem comes into play. So Greece was looted and raped. It was raped because pressures from Britain in chief had induced certain parts of the Greek population to assassinate their own fellow Greeks, but by economic means. So what it means has been the British system, chiefly, but also most of the nations of Europe, west of Russia, have committed a crime of mass murder against Greeks by starving them to death, and similar kinds of things. Now the Greek population, the new present government, says, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to tolerate that. We're not going to accept it. We're going to resist it. And then the nations of Western Europe in chief, especially Britain, and I think all these things, you can get the list of these criminals easily. So what you have is the demand that the Greeks submit to British mass murder of Greeks. Now, some people don't like that. And the main support for the Greeks comes from Russia. Because the power of Russia, even though it's not intended to start a war against Western Europe or something, is in a sense a fact. It's the same thing. You have a lot of the whole area of Europe and Eurasia, from Russia to much of Eurasia, as in China, as in India, many parts of South America now are also on the march to progress and not to success. So the issue right now is, if we were reasonable, we would immediately wipe out the debt attributed to the Greeks, because there is no honest reason why that money should be collected. You have the problem is you have people in Germany who understand that that's wrong, but they don't have the guts so far to do anything about it. The lack of guts on the part of the Germans, and the Merkel is not exactly helping anything good. She would be better out of German politics than in it. And we could have other people in Germany who may not be the greatest people in the world, but these are patriotic Germans, and therefore they would prefer to defend the interests of Germany and adjoining nations, because Germany's characteristic is still now is its industrial characteristic. So the industrial characteristic of Germany, which is unique in terms of that particular part of the track. So if you unleash the potential of the German economy for this kind of trade and production, then you are going to help all nations of Europe by doing so. You will then eliminate the danger of a worldwide thermonuclear war. Because if Russia and Germany and other nations like China and so forth come into play, the war is not going to happen. And all you have to do is throw Obama out down the trash can, and then everything goes much better. It may not be perfect, but it will be much, much better. And for the coming generations of mankind. And that's what the situation is. We are on the edge where the Greek issue is a very important signal of what the problem is that all mankind on the planet faces. The Greeks are doing very well. The Greek government is doing very well and has friends and is moving in directions which are very difficult conditions for it to deal with. But they have a movement, a spirit, and a determination. And many nations like Russia, other nations in Eurasia are very much involved in realizing what the Greeks are. You don't remember the Greeks have played for a very, very long time in Europe and beyond. And the Greeks have been the master of civilization for most periods of life. The Greek legacy, despite the deterioration of the quality of life in Greece, the Greek left this. How did Europe get a modern civilization? It came through the Greeks. Now the Greeks at that time were not exactly in the best condition, but some people like Nicholas of Cusa went into the Greek area where the culture of the classical Greek was still being maintained. And Nicholas of Cusa, who created modern Christianity, did that job. And since that time, we've had improvements in European civilization and in the United States. So that's the story. And the problem of everything that those Europeans who were attacking the Greeks are talking about, their criminal proclivity is what the problem is.
Okay. So in terms of, just let me say to the people listening on the phone that in terms of the classical tradition that Mr. LaRouche has referred to, what was announced earlier from a speaker from New York, a questioner from New York, the concert that's on this Sunday. I've been asked by our Manhattan Project to announce the name of the website where you can get information on the concert on Sunday. And that's the website is www.2015concert.com. That is the numbers 2015concert.com. And if you go to that website, you can get the information about the Father's Day classical concert on Sunday, part of the revival of classical music that our friends are involved in Manhattan and in New York, associated with the Schiller Institute and what Lynn Wen talked about earlier. So Lynn, I've got another question up here, and we'll see what the next person has to say. Here we go.
Okay, good.
Okay. All right, someone's
Hello.
unmuted. Yeah?
Okay, good. Hello?
Okay.
Hi, Mr. LaRouche. Hi, this is Eugene in the Bronx, New York City. I would like to ask you, what do you think about all this gang violence that's going on throughout the country? Many innocent people are getting shot by handguns, and a lot of people have died. I believe that Congress should pass a law doing away with guns for the American public. They have no need of them. And it should be signed into law by the president. In other words, guns shouldn't be made anymore. They shouldn't be manufactured any longer. And all those store owners that acquired their weapons legally to ward off crimes, they would simply be required to turn them into the government, and the government would do away with them. It should be a crime to have a gun. I believe they should be done away with completely. So I would like to know, what is your take about that? What happened?
I don't think that is the problem. I think the point is the misuse of guns is a very significant problem. The misuse. And there, of course, are borders between one thing and the other, where the use of guns and the access to guns has to be under some degree of control, of social control, which is a matter of the security of the body of the citizenry. But there are also weapons which are equally dangerous to guns. So guns, the limitation on guns will not remove the problem, because there are other means. There's, for example, poison. Poison is much more efficient than guns for mass killing of people in the United States and elsewhere. So the idea that the gun is the issue, the gun is symbolic in its use. It's symbolic of what the problem is, but the gun per se is not the problem. The problem is how the gun is used, but how the gun is used is a very small part of the problem of murder, mass murder. Healthcare. That lack of healthcare is murderous. Lack of support to fight against the infectious diseases is murderous. The lack of health care, the destruction of the quality of health care in the United States, which is crucial, because the ability of the citizen to get health care is shrinking all the time at an accelerating rate right now. And Obama has been one of the promoters of that mass killing of citizens of the United States, who are helpless and deprived of access to things they need in order to stay alive. The improvement of medical, and generally of medical care, of health care, dangerous problems that mankind has. The improvement of health care in terms of the scientific means of it. Now, if you have that kind of policy, you enter immediately into a society which develops suitable laws to prevent these things from becoming the abuses that they often are. And often our government itself, through secret organizations, secret bureaus, run under the federal government and similar institutions, are also the big killers. And you don't have to use a gun to kill people by that method. Use poison, use deprivation, use the spread of disease. And the spread of disease willfully is one of the best way of killing people in the United States en masse. And that is going on. The quality of health care available to the people of the United States has collapsed since a recent time, especially since the Obama administration and even before that. So the deliberate mass murder of citizens by misuse of what is called health care is the greatest single threat to human life inside the United States today. The gun is not the agent. The misuse of the gun is a significant problem. But the real problem is the use of instruments by our government itself, as under Obama. Obama is killing people. It's not he doesn't use a gun. He uses himself. And he's the weapon that does the best killing. So it's true, we don't want uncontrolled gun use. But the assumption that gun use is the problem is a mistake. It's relatively minor. Unless you go into general warfare, the gun is not really a significant thing in history. But what is significant is the various means by which governments and other agencies do mass killing. And they don't nicely go out there and just shoot you on the street. That's not how the way it happens. That does happen, but that's not the way it happens. And you have to regulate the question of health care. Do people get health care? You want to kill people? Withdraw health care. You want to increase the rate of death rate? Deal with health care. Eliminate the protection. Fail to give people the help they need to deal with dangerous illnesses. All these kinds of things. And the spread of disease in that form. The spread of disease is one of the most efficient methods of mass killing. And in the United States and by the United States. No, what you're talking about is a legitimate concern. But don't make it simplistic. Guns are not the sum total of willful mass killing or just ordinary killing. Other means are much more efficient.
Okay, I'm going to take another question up here. Here we go.
Yes, Mr. LaRouche, it's a pleasure again to get to ask a question of you, and thank you again for these Fireside Chats. They're awesome. They're really great. Thank you. The question I have, you briefly discussed it a little bit ago about Pope Francis and his position in, I guess he's taken the environmentalist position that there is man-made climate change. Could you expand a little bit more on what you were talking about earlier?
I don't understand fully exactly what the Pope's position is. I understand there are a group of forces which are pushed the Pope to, and I don't know how far that his agreement goes, but I know he's being pushed into doing that. Now, you have a guy called Challeneuver, and Challeneuver is a British agent in profession. He's also a mass killer. His design is mass killing. And the policy here, the fraudulent policy, I don't know how the Pope papacy in somehow or some way or some degree actually bought into this idea of, but the very idea that's pressed in the press, public press, I don't know what the Pope thinks. I don't know what the circles of the Pope actually think. I know that the Pope is under tremendous pressure because of economic policy questions where Italy and other parts of the world are under great pressure because of what conditions like the British conditions imposed. But I will not speak on them myself. I will not say what the Pope's intention is, what his motive is. I know what the pressure is that's on him from Challeneuver, who's a British agent and a mass killer. And I don't think the Pope is a mass killer, but I know Challeneuver is. And that's the problem.
Okay, here we have another question. I think, hold on. I think there's a question. Okay, well, the person may not realize that they are unmuted.
Hello?
Yes, okay, now you can hear us. Go ahead. Where are you from?
In West Palm Beach, Florida.
Okay.
Got a question about the economic cycles. I don't know if you're familiar with Shemitah. Just wondered if you knew anything about
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Sir, could you say that again? It's not clear what you were saying.
Yeah, I was wondering if you're familiar with like the Jewish calendars and economic cycles that pertain to 7-year cycles.
Oh, 7-year cycles. Okay.
Yeah. The Jewish calendars. Familiar with like the Shemitah?
Okay, now I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay, there's a lot of mythical stuff to that stuff. It doesn't work that way. What did happen was well known. It was Adolf Hitler who demonstrated that one. It was Adolf Hitler's policy. And you have, the Hitlerian policy. And Jewry today, of course, is international. That is, there is not such a thing as a universal. There's a Jewish belief, religious belief, and that's a religious belief. But the great horror was, of course, everything today comes as a reflection of the mass murder of Jews by Hitler and by the British. And that's a big factor. And also what happens is part of the play is when, in terms of the Jewish settlement, the increased settlement in terms of that part of the population there, in present Israeli life, is again the same kind of thing. And what you have Jewish policies which come from manipulation of certain sorts, and then on the other hand, if I look at certain Jewish communities, they are developing making a very significant contribution to the improvement of water supplies in arid areas. You have some people in Australia doing the same thing. You have people in Mexico who prove themselves to be very experts in this business. So the promotion of human life is, and the European and the Jewish society are very closely related. You can't make a Jewish distinction. Sure, you have people who are mass murderers. You have people who are enraged, Jews who were enraged. They were enraged by the Hitler massacres, and they became angry. I dealt with very important Jewish leaders in the immediate post-war period. I was a close friend of these groups of the Jewish leaders, military leaders, and so forth in that period. And that was one period. It was so-called socialist period. Then you got the new thing that came in was the hardball nuts, and they screwed everything up for Israel. And they imposed upon Israel a mode of life which is contrary to what the Israelis at the founding of Israel, the modern founding of Israel, were going to do. Remember, you have all these Jews who have been murdered, mass murdered on a degree which is unbelievable, actually, to any human being in a normal case. And now these guys, who were people I worked with, associated with, in the immediate post-war period, and they were my friends, and I know what they were like, the so-called socialist Jewish organization. These guys were warriors, but they weren't killers. They were defending. They're saying, look, all these Jews were killed by Hitler and by his friends, including Saudi friends. And they were trying to live. What happened, things went bad when the so-called socialist group in Israel was pushed aside for this right-wing wild man crowd. And they are a problem. They are a pestilence. And if you go the history of Jewry in Palestine, you have some great heroes in that process, even under the conditions which are not bad, were not good. You have great humanists among Jews in that area. This idea of racial or similar kinds of things is absolute nonsense. Yeah, the Saudis are stinkers. The Saudis are mass killers. You want to worry about something? The Saudis are the mass killers. But they are not really so bad, because the Saudis are nothing but agents of the British Empire, of our Queen, Her Majesty the Queen. Now, if you want to get rid of the problem, get rid of the Queen.
Okay. All right. Well, Lynn, should we take one more question?
I know it.
Okay, here we go.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. Who's call? Yep. What's your first name and where are you calling from?
This is Tim from New Hampshire. I'm truck driving in New Jersey right now, and Annie is in my lap, my pit bull, in a truck.
Okay.
In a traffic jam right now. Mr. LaRouche, it's an honor to speak with you. And the question, it's not really a question because you already answered the question from lady, a couple callers earlier. I just wanted to comment on it, on the gun thing. Why is it that in society, when we have, well, first of all, if you look at the gun statistics of the late, they are down in the last 10, 20 years. Number one. Number two is, why is it when we have a mishap such as the late, we tend to want to get rid of the thing? And it's not just with guns, it's with pit bulls, okay? We'll use that as an example, because we have mishaps all over the country with pit bulls, and now it's at the point where media, the government, everybody is saying, and people are saying, oh, they're a bad breed, you have to get rid of them, they're no good. It's not the breed, it's the people that are in control of such. And I'll take my comment off the air.
Okay, let me give a autobiographical slant on what you're talking about. During the 1970s, I ran for president of the United States, and I made quite a stir at that point by that president's central campaign. And in the following period, shortly after that, I was approached by some people who were historically leaders of the presidency in the intelligence services, and this was during the period of World War II. These people, as senior people who were part of Franklin Roosevelt's close followers, came to me in 1977, and they came to me and asked me to. Would I work to do certain things for the United States in terms of a new administration in the United States, which was the Reagan administration. And of course, as most people know, that Reagan was soon shot with an attempt to kill him, actually. And he was very much weakened in his ability to maintain much of his functions from that point on. And what happened is that Bush came in as an infection, a festation, which entered into the presidency. Now, this was a very bad thing, just to make the point clear, is that the original Bush of the Bush family genocide, or what you want to call it that, and what happened is that this policy was mistakenly allowed to bring a member of the Bush family, that is a child of the President Bush Nazi type, who was operating for Britain. So what happened is the president, under those conditions, the president of the United States, Ronald Reagan at that time, was shot by a representative of the family of Bush. And so he was crippled for a while, and the whole system that we were operating on was then frustrated because the Bush factor entered into the Reagan administration through the assistance of the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan at that time. As a result of that process, I had been running as a real specialist on science programs, for international science programs, then. And I was working with one of the leading scientists of the world at that time, and we were sharing assignments, which we had organized together with Ronald Reagan to negotiate an agreement with the remains of the Soviet Union to avoid war between the United States and the Soviet Union at that time. And that was good. It was good. But what happened is the Bush interest moved in through the aid of the British. And what they did is they put in a new head of the Soviet Union, was as an emergency thing, from Britain. And the British influence of that leader, just stopped in there, changed the entire policy from the Reagan administration policy, which I had been an active part of, together with a leading scientist of the world, who's my, shall we say, co-worker. And that's how things happened. So when you want to understand these kinds of things, you have to understand that the movement of the Bush family, which is actually a Nazi-like family, the Prescott Bush family, he was literally a Nazi at that time. And the Bush family has this sync of a Nazi characteristic ever since that time to the present day, including the current Bushes. And I don't believe in burning the bushes because I don't want the stink up there. But that's the situation. So if we look at world history, as you might look from a practical standpoint, from your profession, your activity, that's what the problem is. We had two good presidents after that. And they were both people I worked with. And then, that's the history. So the problem is we have not had decent presidents except for two cases of installation since the time that Reagan was shot. That may be interesting for you. I think perhaps your practical circumstances in life might make that interesting to you.
Well, Lynn, we started out our discussion this evening, of course, on the note of classical music. And again, I want to refer people to, if you're in the New York City area, you can get information on what I think is going to be a spectacular event this Sunday, Father's Day, at the website 2015concert.com. So, Lynn, I know that besides what I know you've been discussing a lot with your associates and organizers about the music project in New York, the other major statement that you have put out in the last day, you referred to earlier in the discussion this evening. It's on our website, LaRouchePAC.com. It's entitled, Dump London's Phony Debts with Glass-Steagall. The euro is bankrupt, not the drachma. And of course, in that statement, Lynn, at the end, you said that this is a quote, you said the critical action is Glass-Steagall and the United States and force it in European countries. And of course, that's in reference to the Greek crisis, which you referred to already earlier in our discussion. So I want to just reference that for everyone on the call that they can get that further information on the website. So Lynn, we covered a tremendous amount of discussion and ground here this evening. Do you want to say anything here in conclusion for those who are still on the line with us?
Yeah, I just think probably a closing note might be useful on the overall perspective one, because we've covered this evening so far. We've covered a number of subjects, and I want to emphasize that all these subjects are related, including the questions made by the people who were the questioners, that all of this material is relevant. It's part of life. There may be some missing elements in the record we presented this evening, but the same principle exists under even different conditions. We must be as a nation, we must pull ourselves together to face the questions which we should be considering in life, even the questions we hadn't even known about beforehand, which is often a frequent case. And we should get mankind to unify himself, not about the individual as the individual, but to bring the people of the United States in particular together around, even though they have different backgrounds, different kinds of considerations. They are the same people and should be the same people. They shouldn't be different groups of people. They should be the people of the United States and the families of the United States and the culture of the United States and the people of the United States. That's what it has to be. The idea of the rugged individual is a very stinking idea. The role of the individual who can express a participation in the love for all mankind, which is expressed by promoting people to become educated, to understand what the principles of mankind should be. under the conditions of the contemporary period. That is the issue. And all the things we discussed tonight in particular fit into that one thing. Don't try to assume that everybody is different. They're all different in some way, but their needs are similar. Their future, the possibility of their future is the same. The condition of the world as a whole, not only the United States, is the same. What we have to do is build up nations of the planet, like our United States, like the states of South America, like Australia, like the Middle East, like China, like India, like Russia, and so forth, and Europe. All these things are things which have to come together, because in the final analysis, we live not only on Earth, but mankind lives in the galaxy also. And we're now beginning to understand what the galaxy means, that mankind lives under the domain of the galaxy, as it lived also under Kepler's understanding of the way the solar system was created and functioned. So it's all one thing, with many differences in shading and characteristics, but the object is to bring mankind as a species into a growing, developing process for the future of mankind, and for the future of what mankind can accomplish in the galaxy and other locations of relevance. And so we should have this kind of unification of concern, not particularization, but the search to come together from different standpoints, from different skills, but all coming to a common purpose at the same time.
Well, thank you so much, Lynn. Really, I know everyone, and I do, we all appreciate that you've engaged in this dialogue, and we'll get the recording out to people tomorrow evening, and we look forward to speaking with you again next week. So that is the end of our call here this evening, and we will get the recording out to you tomorrow by email, and it will be posted on LaRouchePAC.com website. Thank you, everyone, and that is the end of our activist call here this evening. Good night, everyone. Good night, Lynn.
A bientôt.
Okay. All right.
Goodbye.